Let's get a quick take on a poll released this week showing Colorado voters being more likely to support Democratic candidates for Congress, especially among independent voters. The statewide Magellan Strategies Poll also revealed that the approval rating of President Trump's first few months in office is at 47% among Colorado's voters compared to 42% nationwide. Patty Calhoun from Westward. This seemed like the quintessential Colorado poll. Generic Democrats versus generic Republicans were doing far better, and at the same time, Trump polling 5% better than the rest of the nation. I didn't get it. What did you take away from this poll?
And of course, Trump is doing better than he did here during the November election. What I took from this poll is what we all should have taken from polls last October, which is they don't mean much. And if you are counting on them to predict what's going to happen in an election, you're going to be very surprised. It is not a huge surprise that independents would say they might lean Democratic in the congressional races, but it depends on the candidate. And we've seen some really unusual candidates from both parties who can quickly swing voters the other direction.
David Kopel from the Independence Institute and DU Law School. Were you surprised to see anybody, let alone Magellan Strategies, investing in a poll this early into the season?
No, because that's part of how they get their name out, among other things. It's normal in American politics. It's part of our inherent checks and balances is when one party wins the presidency, then the other side tends to get more energized, and they often do well in the next congressional elections. We saw that with Obama in 2010, with Bill Clinton in 1994, and Reagan in 1982, and on and on. It's a little surprising that Trump's more popular in Colorado than nationwide, because it's not his demographic on the whole. But there's other. One of the surprising things in the national poll is he's more popular with Hispanics by 3 points than he is with the general population. People didn't predict that one either. I will say one good thing in the Magellan poll was a question that the Independence Institute paid to have included, which is our proposal to fix our roads without raising taxes and just by spending the enormous budget Colorado already has. And that was favored by the voters by a 30-point margin.
Eric Sonneman, political analyst, when it came to congressional candidates, they used generic Democrat versus generic Republican. So we know that it's far different once we get to next year. But if you're either a potential Democratic candidate or a Republican incumbent in Colorado, do you take anything away from this poll that changes your strategy or at least makes you feel better or worse?
I don't probably take anything away from this poll that I didn't know in my bones anyway as a potential Democratic candidate or as a vulnerable Republican incumbent, which is that 2018 could very well, still a long ways away, but could very well be a problematic year for Republicans. David pointed it out well. The party in power in the White House typically has a rough off year. Ask Barack Obama about his 2 off-year elections in 2010 and again in 2014. It is tough territory. Donald Trump has defied all other rules. We'll see if he defies this one. He might defy it in a way that it's not as tough for the Republican Party. He might defy it in a way that it is disastrous. And there are a lot of Democrats betting on the latter, but they were also making bets in 2016 that did not come to fruition. We do not run generic races for Congress. We run races between real live flesh and blood candidates. Last thing I'd say, Dominic, is I don't know what the sample size on this poll was. I'm surmising it was 400 or 500 total sample. You divide that into 7 congressional districts, so maybe you have 60 or 70 people per congressional district. Pretty small sample, pretty high margin of error. I'm not putting a lot of stock in this one.
And Justine Sandoval, political activist, rounding out the panel. President Trump polling 5% higher in Colorado, at least according to this poll, than the rest of the nation. Surprised?
I actually am surprised. Well, let me take that back. Nothing surprises me anymore. Everything is just so crazy, especially in this state. What I find is going to be very interesting is having an open primary this election cycle and how we're going to deal with that, because you know, we can get some pretty interesting characters with independents being the largest voting bloc here in Colorado. It'll be interesting to see who gets nominated on each side and how that essentially plays out, because right now Democrats could be polling stronger to be elected, but depending on who gets nominated for those seats could really change the way voters go in Colorado.